The stars had always called to humanity. By the year 2847, they had answered that call and spread across dozens of star systems. They built cities on alien worlds, made homes in places their ancestors could only dream about, and joined a great alliance called the Galactic Concord. This alliance held 17 different species together in peace for over 40,000 years. Humans were the newest members, having joined only 3 centuries ago. They were still learning the rules of a galaxy much older than themselves. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of her ship, the starward dawn, and watched the stars streak past the viewport. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many strange things to be surprised by much anymore. At 52 years old, she had spent most of her life in space. She loved it out here, away from the politics and noise of the core worlds. Her mission seemed simple enough. Concord's Central Command had ordered her to investigate an abandoned research station on a dead world called Kethris 7. The planet had no atmosphere, no life, nothing but rock and dust and whatever secrets the old station held. It should have been a routine salvage operation. Lisa had done dozens of missions like this before. Her crew was small but capable. Jake Morrison sat at the pilot's station, a young man with quick hands and an easy smile. He could fly anything with an engine and had saved their lives more than once with his skills. Dr. Hannah Cole was their xenolinguist, an expert in alien languages and ancient texts. She was quiet and serious, with dark hair that she always wore in a practical bun. Marcus Bell handled security. He was built like a wall, with a shaved head and scars on his arms from a dozen different fights. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. The starward dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Kethris 7 filled the viewport. It was an ugly world, brown and gray, and covered in craters. The research station sat in a valley between 2 dead mountains. It had been abandoned for over a century, according to the records. They landed without trouble. The station's airlock still worked, which was lucky. Lisa led her team inside while Jake stayed with the ship. The corridors were dark and dusty, but their lights cut through the blackness easily enough. Old equipment lined the walls. Data terminals sat silent, waiting for someone to wake them up. Hannah went straight to the main computer core. She was excited in the way she always got when there was a mystery to solve. Lisa watched her work, fingers dancing across ancient keyboards, coaxing the machines back to life. That it took 3 hours before Hannah found something interesting. Lisa was checking the station's old laboratories when her communicator buzzed. "Come to the core," Hannah said. Her voice sounded strange. "You need to see this." Lisa found Hannah staring at a screen filled with symbols she did not recognize. Marcus stood behind her, his hand resting on his weapon out of habit. "What am I looking at?" Lisa asked. Hannah turned to face her. Her eyes were wide. "These are Velthari texts." The Velthari were a species that disappeared 2 million years ago. They were incredibly advanced. They left behind prophecies carved into the bedrock of 1,000 worlds. Most of those prophecies warned about natural disasters or gave advice to younger species. But this one is different. Different how? Hannah pulled up another screen. This file was sealed at the highest levels of Concord security. Someone hid it here, probably hoping it would never be found. I have been working on decrypting it. I have only managed to translate a small portion so far. But Lisa, what I have found is incredible. She pressed a button and text appeared on the screen. Lisa read it slowly, her heart beating faster with each word. The prophecy spoke of a species that would rise from a small blue world orbiting a yellow sun. This species would be forged in war and suffering. They would know violence like no other race. They would carry fire in their hearts and iron in their souls. They would spread across the stars and stand at the center of everything that was to come. The ancient Velthari, who had mapped the future itself, had looked across millions of years and seen something that made them afraid. They were not afraid of cosmic disasters or natural extinction. They were afraid of one thing only. They were afraid of humans. Lisa read the text 3 times to make sure she understood. This is impossible. The Valkyrie vanished millions of years before humans even existed. How could they know about us? Hannah shook her head. I do not know. But this prophecy has been hidden for 300 years. Ever since humanity joined the Concorde. Someone did not want us to find this. A warning light flashed on Hannah's console. Ships incoming. Jake's voice came through the communicator. 4 Concorde security vessels just dropped out of faster than light. They are ordering us to stand down and prepare for boarding. Lisa felt cold. The Concorde had never sent security ships after her before. Someone was watching this station. Someone knew they would find the prophecy. Download everything you can, she told Hannah. Now Hannah worked fast. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she copied files to a portable drive. The Concorde ships were getting closer. Lisa could hear their engines through the station's thin walls. Marcus moved to the door. I can buy us time. No, Lisa said. We do this peacefully. We are not criminals. We have done nothing wrong. But even as she said it, she knew something had changed. The Concorde had kept this secret from humanity for 3 centuries. They had hidden a prophecy that said humans were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Why? What were they afraid of? The Concorde security teams arrived 20 minutes later. They were polite but firm. They confiscated all of Hannah's equipment and sealed the station behind them. A Concorde official told Lisa that the mission was classified and that she was not to speak of what she had found. Lisa said nothing. She did not argue or fight. She simply nodded and led her crew back to the starward dawn. But Hannah had managed to hide a copy of the partial translation in her personal files. As the ship flew away from Kethra 7, she showed it to Lisa one more time. The Valkyrie feared us, Hannah whispered. The most advanced species to ever exist looked into the future and saw humanity, and they were terrified. We need to find out why. Lisa stared at the dead planet growing smaller in the viewport. Somewhere out there, the complete prophecy waited. Somewhere out there, the truth about humanity's destiny lay hidden. She intended to find it. 6 months passed after the incident on Kethra 7. The Concorde moved quickly to bury what Lisa and her crew had found. Lisa was reassigned to a desk job on a space station far from anything important. Jake got transferred to a cargo hauling route in the outer systems. Marcus was sent to guard a mining operation on a moon nobody cared about. The message was clear. Stay quiet. Forget what you learned. Move on with your lives. But Hannah Cole was not good at forgetting things. She had spent her whole career studying ancient texts and solving mysteries. The Valkyrie prophecy was the greatest mystery she had ever encountered, and she refused to let it go. She worked in secret, using encrypted channels to contact scholars and researchers across Concorde space. Some of them had heard rumors about the prophecy. Others had found fragments of Valkyrie texts that mentioned a species from a small blue world. Piece by piece, Hannah began to assemble a bigger picture. 6 months after Kethra 7, she sent a message to Lisa. The encryption was military grade. The content was simple. I found more. We need to talk. Lisa took leave from her desk job and traveled to meet Hannah on a neutral station. Her old friend looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair had gone gray at the temples. But there was fire in her gaze that Lisa recognized. The prophecy is not just about humans being dangerous, Hannah explained. They sat in a private room with the door locked and signal jammers running. It describes a specific moment. A crossroads. According to the Valkyrie calculations, we are living in that moment right now. Within the next year, Something will happen that determines humanity's path forever. What kind of something? Hannah shook her head. I do not have the complete text yet, but the fragments I found suggest that certain individuals will make choices that shape everything. They will not know how important their decisions are. They will just be ordinary people doing what they think is right. Far away, on the frontier world called New Austin, a young man named Danny Price was doing ordinary things. He was 23 years old, with sandy hair and strong arms from working his family's farm. New Austin was a quiet planet, mostly farmland and small towns. Danny had never been off-world. He had never wanted to be. He liked the simple life, the honest work, the feeling of dirt between his fingers. One night, he was walking home from the fields when he saw something streak across the sky. It was not a meteor. Meteors did not change direction. This thing curved and twisted like it was trying to control its fall. Then it crashed in the northern field with a sound like thunder. Danny ran toward the crash. He should have called the authorities. He should have waited for help. But something pulled him forward, a feeling he could not explain. The ship was small, barely bigger than his tractor. It was made of metal that seemed to shift colors when he looked at it. The hull was cracked open, and smoke poured from inside. Danny climbed through the crack and found the pilot. It was not human. It was not any species Danny recognized from the news feeds. It was tall and thin, with silver skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were like pools of liquid gold. It was dying. Even Danny could see that. The alien looked at him. It reached out with one of its hands and pressed something into Danny's palm. A crystal, small enough to fit in his fist, warm to the touch and glowing faintly from within. The alien spoke. The words were in a language Danny did not understand. But somehow, the meaning reached him anyway. It was a warning. It was a plea. It was the most important thing Danny had ever heard, even though he could not explain what it meant. Then the alien died. Danny stood there for a long time, holding the crystal. He did not know what to do. He did not know who to call. All he knew was that his simple life had just become very complicated. On the other side of the galaxy, a reptilian diplomat named Tethril prepared for the most important mission of his career. He was a Serati, a species known for their patience and wisdom. He had served the Concord for over a century. Now the Council had given him a delicate task. He was going to Earth to meet with the human colonial authority. His official mission was to propose new treaties that would benefit both sides. His real mission was something else entirely. The Concord had decided that the prophecy must not come true. They had spent 300 years watching humanity grow stronger, spread faster, and become more unpredictable. Now they wanted to slow that growth. They wanted to put limits on human expansion and military development. They wanted to contain the species that the Velthri had feared. Tethril understood the logic. He even agreed with parts of it. But he had studied humans for decades. He had read their history, learned their languages, watched their stories. He knew they would not accept restrictions without understanding why, and he was not certain the Concord had made the right choice. As his ship approached Earth, Tethril looked at the blue world growing larger in his viewport. The Velthri had seen this planet millions of years ago. They had predicted that its children would change everything. Tethril wondered if the Concord was trying to prevent a disaster or create one. Back on New Austin, Danny Price buried the alien in his family plot and hid the crystal in his room. He told no one what had happened. But 3 days later, strangers came to town asking questions about strange lights in the sky. Danny watched them from his window. They wore Concord uniforms and carried weapons. They were looking for him. The storm was gathering, and nobody could see it coming. Not the Concord with all their power. Not humanity with all their ambition. Not even the people who would soon stand at the center of everything. The crossroads was approaching, and the choices that would shape the galaxy were about to be made by people who had no idea how much depended on them. Lisa Grant had spent her whole career following orders. She believed in the system, trusted the chain of command, and did her duty without question. But 6 months of sitting at a desk had changed something inside her. Every night, she dreamed about the prophecy. Every morning, she woke up angry at the lies she had been told. When Hannah sent her the latest findings, Lisa made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year ago. She was going rogue. Getting the old crew back together was easier than she expected. Jake was bored out of his mind hauling cargo. Marcus was tired of watching Myers dig holes. They both jumped at the chance for a real mission again. Within 2 weeks, the Starward Dawn was flying toward the Veiled Nebula with a crew of 3 humans who had officially become criminals. The Veiled Nebula was a region of space that made experienced pilots nervous. Thick clouds of gas and dust blocked sensors and communications. Strange energy fields played tricks on navigation systems. According to Hannah's research, the Valkyrie had once maintained their greatest library somewhere inside. It held the complete prophecy and countless other secrets. No ship had ever returned from the nebula in recorded history. Lisa did not care. She needed answers. On New Austin, Danny Price was running for his life. The Concord agents had come to his farm 3 days after the crash. They searched everything. They questioned his parents. They scanned the fields with equipment Danny did not recognize. Somehow, they knew the alien had given him something important. Danny escaped through the back fields with nothing but the clothes on his back and the crystal hidden in his pocket. He hitched rides with farmers and truckers, staying off the main roads, sleeping in barns and empty buildings. He had no plan except to keep moving. His luck changed when he stumbled into a bar in a small town called Dusty Creek. A woman with red hair and sharp eyes watched him from across the room. She looked like trouble, but Danny was out of options. Her name was Nora Webb, and she was the captain of a smuggling ship called the Lucky Break. She had a crew of 5, a fast ship, and a deep hatred for the Concord. When Danny told her about the crystal and the dying alien, her eyes lit up with interest. My brother disappeared 2 years ago, she said. He was investigating Valkyrie ruins when his ship vanished. The Concord called it an accident. I never believed them. If that crystal holds answers, I want to know what they are. Danny did not have many choices. He could keep running alone, or he could take a chance on this stranger. He chose to trust her. Far away on Earth, the negotiations between Ambassador Tethrall and the human colonial authority were falling apart. The humans were suspicious. They did not understand why the Concord suddenly wanted to restrict their expansion. They asked questions that Tethrall could not answer honestly. A young diplomat named Kevin Park was the most persistent. He was barely 30 years old, with glasses and a mind like a steel trap. He had noticed strange patterns in Concord behavior over the past century. Unexplained restrictions, classified files, secrets that made no sense. Ambassador, Kevin said during one particularly tense meeting, I have spent months reviewing the historical records. Every time humanity has tried to expand into certain sectors, the Concord has blocked us. Every time we have tried to develop certain technologies, you have discouraged us. It feels like someone is afraid of what we might become. Tethrall looked at the young human. He saw intelligence in those eyes and determination. He saw someone who would not stop asking questions until he found the truth. For the first time in his long career, Tethrall considered telling a human the real reason for his mission. The Valkyrie prophecy was supposed to remain secret. But secrets had a way of causing more damage than truth. He decided to wait. But Kevin Park had planted a seed of doubt that would continue to grow. The Starward Dawn reached the Veiled Nebula after 3 weeks of travel. Lisa had expected the journey to be difficult. She had not expected what they found at the center of the clouds. The Valkyrie Library was not a building. It was an entire structure made of crystal and light, floating in the void like a frozen dream. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. As they approached, something scanned their ship. Lisa felt it in her mind, a presence studying her, measuring her worth. Then a voice spoke in her head. You seek the truth about your kind. Very well, the truth has a price. Are you prepared to pay it? Lisa answered without hesitation. Yes. The library opened for them. Inside, they found corridors that seemed to go on forever, rooms filled with knowledge that would take lifetimes to study. But they were not alone. A machine waited for them at the center of the library. It was shaped vaguely like a person, made of the same crystal as the walls. Its eyes glowed with ancient light. I am the keeper, it said. I was built to guard the prophecy and to test those who seek it. Many have come before you. All have failed. Now it is your turn. What kind of test? Marcus asked, his hand on his weapon. The machine looked at him. Your weapons will not help you here. This test is not about strength. It is about understanding. The room around them changed. Suddenly, they were standing in the middle of a burning city. Humans fought and killed each other in the streets. Lisa recognized the uniforms from history books. This was Earth, centuries ago, during one of the great wars. This is what you are, the machine said. A species forged in violence. You have fought each other since your beginning. You have caused more suffering to your own kind than most species ever face. The scene changed again. Now they saw soldiers running into fire to save wounded friends. They saw doctors working through the night to heal strangers. They saw people building homes from rubble and sharing food when they had almost nothing. But this is also what you are, the machine continued. Alone among all the species I have observed, you choose to fight against impossible odds. You sacrifice yourselves for others without expecting reward. You carry hope in your hearts even when hope seems foolish. Lisa felt tears on her face. She had never seen humanity so clearly before. All the darkness and all the light. Side by side. The machine looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. Now I ask you, Commander Grant, what makes humans different? Why do you fight when others would surrender? Why do you hope when others would despair? Lisa thought about her crew. She thought about her family. She thought about every human she had ever known. Because we have to, she said finally. Because giving up is not in our nature. We are not perfect. We make terrible mistakes. But we always try to be better. That is what makes us human. The machine was silent for a long moment. Then it nodded. You may proceed to the prophecy. But be warned. The truth you find may change everything you believe about your place in this galaxy. Lisa walked forward into the light, ready to learn what the Valkyrie had really seen when they looked at humanity across the vast distance of time. The complete prophecy filled Lisa's mind like a flood. Images and words and feelings poured through her. 2 million years of knowledge compressed into a single moment. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by what she was seeing. The Valkyrie had not simply been advanced. They had learned to see through time itself. They could watch the future unfold like a river, tracking its currents and understanding where it would flow. They had used this ability to guide younger species, warning them about disasters before they happened. But when they looked far into the future, they saw something that terrified them. A darkness was coming. Not a metaphor or a symbol, but a real thing. A vast machine intelligence that existed between galaxies, older than the stars themselves. It had destroyed countless civilizations across countless galaxies. It consumed everything it touched, stripped planets bare, turned entire species into dust. The Valkyrie had called it the Silence because wherever it went, all life ended. The Silence had noticed the Valkyrie. It was coming for their galaxy. And the Valkyrie knew they could not stop it. so they looked for someone who could. They searched through millions of years of possible futures, examining every species that would ever exist. They found that most civilizations, when faced with the silence, would do one of two things. They would flee, scattering across space and delaying their doom but never escaping it. Or they would surrender, offering to serve the silence in exchange for survival. Only one species chose differently. Only one species looked at an enemy that had destroyed countless galaxies and decided to fight. Anyway, humans, the Valkyrie, saw humans standing against the silence when every logical calculation said they should run. They saw humans inspiring other species to fight alongside them. They saw humans finding ways to hurt an enemy that had never been hurt before. And in some futures, they saw humans winning. But the prophecy also showed darker paths. In some futures, humanity used its fire to conquer rather than protect. In some futures, humans became tyrants who crushed other species beneath their rule. In some futures, they became worse than the silence itself. The Valkyrie could not tell which future would come true. That depended on choices that had not been made yet. All they could do was leave behind tools and hope that humanity would use them wisely. Lisa opened her eyes. She was lying on the floor of the library, with Jake and Marcus standing over her looking worried. "I understand now," she whispered. The Concorde was not just afraid of what we might do. They were afraid of what we might become. She told them everything. The silence. The Valkyrie weapons. The choice that humanity would have to make. Jake looked scared. Marcus looked determined. Both of them understood that the stakes were higher than anyone had imagined. Far across the galaxy, Danny Price was having his own revelation. Nora Webb had contacts in the underground market who knew about Valkyrie technology. One of them was an old alien scientist named Kethos who had spent his whole life studying the ancient race. When Danny showed him the crystal, Kethos nearly fainted. "This is a key," Kethos explained, his four hands trembling as he held the glowing object. The Valkyrie hid weapons across the galaxy, weapons powerful enough to fight the great enemy they foresaw. But they locked those weapons away because they feared what might happen if the wrong hands found them. Only someone who passes their final test can open the vaults. What kind of test? Danny asked. Kethos looked at him with something like wonder. "The test is already happening, young human. The crystal chose you. It would only work for someone with the right qualities. Whatever those qualities are, you have them." Danny did not feel special. He was just a farmer from a frontier world who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the crystal pulsed warmly in his hand, like it was alive and listening. Meanwhile, on Earth, everything was falling apart. Ambassador Tethral's negotiations had failed completely. The human colonial authority rejected all restrictions on their expansion. They accused the Concorde of trying to contain humanity for political reasons. Angry words led to broken treaties. Broken treaties led to military movements. Across human space, colonies were arming themselves. Ships were being built. War seemed inevitable. Kevin Park came to Tethral's quarters late one night. The young diplomat looked exhausted, but determined. "I know there is something you are not telling us," Kevin said. "I have seen the classified files. I know about Kethris 7. I know about the prophecy. If you want to prevent a war, you need to start telling the truth." Tethral had spent his whole life serving the Concorde. He had always believed in their wisdom. But now, watching humanity and the Concorde march toward conflict, he realized that secrets had brought them to this point. Only truth could save them. He told Kevin everything. Kevin listened without interrupting. When Tethral finished, the young human was quiet for a long time. "So the Concorde has been afraid of us this whole time," Kevin said finally. "They have been trying to contain us because of something that might happen in the future. They never gave us a chance to prove ourselves." Charles nodded. I believe that was a mistake. I believe humanity deserves to know the truth and make their own choice. Then help me, Kevin said. Help me tell our leaders what is really happening. Help me stop this war before it destroys us all. Lisa Grant was already working on the same goal. She had managed to contact Tethril through back channels, sharing what she had learned in the Velthari library. Together, they began building a coalition of humans and aliens who believed that cooperation was better than conflict. But they were running out of time. Deep in the void between galaxies, something stirred. The Silence had been watching this galaxy for millennia, waiting for the right moment to move. It had seen the Velthari rise and fall. It had seen countless species come and go. Now it sensed something new. A species that burned brighter than the others. A species that might actually pose a threat. The Silence began to move. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, people felt a sudden chill they could not explain. Something was coming. Something terrible. Something that would test everything they believed about themselves. The crossroads had arrived. The choice was near. And humanity still did not know if they would be the galaxy's salvation or its destruction. The first attacks came without warning. 3 conquered worlds went silent in a single day. No distress calls. No final messages. Just silence where there had been millions of voices. Scout ships raced to investigate. What they found broke something in the hearts of everyone who saw the reports. The planets were still there, but everything else was gone. Cities reduced to dust. Oceans boiled away. Every trace of life erased down to the bacteria in the soil. It was as if a giant hand had simply wiped the worlds clean. The Silence had arrived. Panic spread through the Concord like wildfire. Emergency councils were called. Military fleets were mobilized. But there was nothing to fight. The enemy moved like a ghost, appearing without warning and vanishing before anyone could respond. 4 more worlds fell in the next week. Then 7. Then 12. Species began to flee. Massive refugee ships launched from homeworlds that had stood for thousands of years. Some went to the far edges of the galaxy, hoping distance would save them. Others sent messages into the void, offering surrender, begging for mercy. The Silence did not respond. It simply kept advancing. But humanity did something unexpected. Instead of running, they started sending ships toward the attacked systems. Not warships, but rescue vessels. Medical ships. Supply transports. Humans poured resources into saving survivors from species that had treated them as a threat just months ago. They asked nothing in return. They simply showed up and started helping. Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of a converted cargo ship, coordinating rescue efforts in a system where 2 billion people had died. She had not slept in 3 days. Her voice was hoarse from giving orders. But she kept working because the survivors needed her. "Commander," one of her crew said, "a Concord military officer is requesting communication." On screen, the face that appeared was Tethril. He looked older than Lisa remembered, worn down by stress and grief. "Commander Grant," he said, "the Concord High Council wishes to speak with humanity's leaders. We have been wrong about many things. It is time to work together. Far away. Danny Price was approaching the first Velthari vault. Nora Webb had spent weeks tracking down coordinates hidden in the crystal's data. The vault was buried deep inside an asteroid in an uncharted system. No one had visited this place in millions of years. Danny stood before the massive door with his crystal in hand. The door was carved with symbols that seemed to move when he looked at them directly. He could feel the power waiting inside, weapons that could change the course of the war. The crystal glowed brighter. The door recognized it and began to open. Inside, Danny found something that took his breath away. Machines of impossible complexity lined the walls. Energy weapons that could crack planets. shield generators that could protect entire fleets, technology that made the most advanced Concorde systems look like children's toys. But there was also a presence. A guardian, like the one Lisa had met in the library. It materialized before Danny as a figure made of pure light. "You have found the weapons," the guardian said. "But before you take them, you must understand what they mean. These tools can destroy the silence. They can also destroy everything else. How they are used depends on the one who wields them." The guardian showed Danny two visions. In the first, humanity used the weapons to defeat the silence and then kept them. They became the most powerful force in the galaxy. Other species bowed before them out of fear. Humans ruled everything, and slowly they became the very thing they had fought against. The fire that had saved the galaxy consumed it instead. In the second vision, humanity used the weapons to win the war and then gave them up. They shared the technology freely. They helped rebuild what was lost. They became protectors rather than rulers, guardians rather than conquerors. The fire in their hearts lit the way for others without burning them. "The choice must be made now," the guardian said. "And it must be genuine. You cannot pretend. I will see the truth in your heart." Danny thought about his home on New Austin. He thought about his parents, his neighbors, the simple life he had loved. He thought about Nora and her lost brother. He thought about all the people who had died and all the people who might still be saved. He had never wanted power. He had never wanted to rule anyone. He just wanted to help. "We will protect," Danny said quietly. "Not conquer. We will share, not hoard. That is who we are. That is who we choose to be." The guardian studied him for a long moment. Then it smiled. "The weapons are yours. Use them well." The final battle took place in a system that had no name. Humanity had rallied every ship they could find. Concorde species that had once feared humans now fought alongside them. Even species that had planned to surrender changed their minds when they saw humans charging into impossible odds. Lisa Grant commanded the main fleet. Danny Price operated the Velthury weapons from a specially modified ship. Tethril coordinated alien allies from a Concorde battlecruiser. Kevin Park managed communications, keeping all the different species working together despite their differences. The silence was vast beyond comprehension. It filled space like a living shadow, machines the size of moons moving in perfect coordination. It had destroyed countless galaxies. It had never been stopped, but it had never faced humans before. The battle raged for 3 days. Ships died by the thousands. Entire fleets were wiped out in minutes. The silence adapted to every weapon, countered every strategy, learned from every attack. Victory seemed impossible. On the third day, Marcus Bell led a volunteer squadron on a suicide mission into the heart of the silence. They carried a weapon that Danny had found in the vault, something the Velthury had designed specifically for this enemy. Getting it close enough to work required flying directly into the silence's core defenses. None of the volunteers expected to survive. They went anyway. Marcus sent one final message before his communication cut out. He quoted words that humans had been saying to tyrants throughout their entire history. "We do not kneel." The weapon detonated. The silence screamed, a sound that echoed through space itself. For the first time in its endless existence, the Great Destroyer felt pain. And across the battlefield, every human ship surged forward. They did not win that day, or the next, but they kept fighting. And slowly, impossibly, the silence began to retreat. The war lasted 2 more years. Many people died. Many worlds were lost forever. But humanity never gave up, and eventually, the other species stopped giving up too. Together, they pushed the silence back, wounded it, drove it out of their galaxy. They could not destroy it completely. Something that old and vast could not simply be ended. But they hurt it enough that it retreated to the void between galaxies, and the surviving worlds finally knew peace. 50 years later, Danny Price stood on a world that had once been dead. New cities rose around him, built by a dozen different species working side by side. The war was a memory now. The Concord had been reformed into something better, with humans as equal partners. Lisa Grant, retired and gray-haired but still sharp-eyed, came to visit him. "We did it," Danny said, looking at the bustling streets below. "We actually did it," Lisa smiled. The Valkyrie saw two possibilities. "We chose the better one," Danny nodded. But the Guardian was right. The choice does not end. We have to keep making it every day for the rest of our lives. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder. "Then we will, because that is who we are." Later that year, Lisa returned to the Valkyrie library one last time. The Guardian was still there, waiting in the crystal halls. "Did we pass the test?" she asked. The Guardian looked at her with ancient eyes. "The test never ends," it said. "But today, you chose well." Lisa smiled and walked back to her ship. There was still work to do. There always would be. But for the first time in a long time, she was not afraid of what came next. The fire in humanity's heart had not consumed the galaxy. It had saved it. And somewhere, across millions of years, the Valkyrie looked at what humanity had become and finally stopped being afraid.